Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, March 23rd, 2006. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. So, you know your homebrew is good, but is it good enough to compete on a national level? If you're a member of the American Homebrewers Association, you probably received a call for entries for the 28th Annual National Homebrew Competition that's coming up very shortly. This week, Gary Glass, director of the AHA, joins us to talk about the national contest. In looking at the mailbag, I noticed that a couple of the letters I've responded to recently have come back undeliverable. So if you've sent me an email through the contact form on basicbrewing.com and haven't heard from me, it's probably because you've entered your email address incorrectly. I do my darndest to answer all the notes I get, so be sure you give your proper address on the form. Well, one that I was able to get through is John from Sparta, Michigan, who writes and says, I'm a beginning homebrewer. I just started my third batch of beer, a wheat, using liquid yeast for the first time. My primary fermenter is a 7.5-gallon bucket, and this batch turned out to be about 6.5 gallons total volume. I put the batch into the primary and pitched the yeast. About 20 hours later, the following evening, I checked on the batch to find the yeast was so aggressive it had blown the top on my airlock and blown the top off the primary, leaking krausen down the side and onto my stand. So, John says, the wort was exposed to air for an indeterminate amount of time. My question is, do you think this batch will be okay, or should I dump it? Well, I've gotten a few letters recently from homebrewers worried about the fate of their beers after the airlock or the top has popped off their fermenters. Well, this happens sometimes. Sometimes a batch of beer gets so energetic in the fermenter that it rises up and blows the airlock right out of the hole. Well, sometimes it even crawls out and over the side, like it did with John's batch. Well, if this happens to you, don't panic. Just clean and sanitize your airlock and replace it onto the fermenter, and close the lid and clean around there, too, as well. Chances are that the CO2 that's escaping from the wort has probably provided enough positive air pressure to keep the contamination out, so don't worry about it. Some beers are more likely to have a blowout than others. In my experience, wheat beers like John's are some of the most active. Now, if you are brewing a batch of beer that you think may blow the top off, you can use a blow-off tube and run it into a pan of water so that any overflow can go safely into the pan. I also received a note from another home brewer, and I apologize that since then I've lost the email in my disorganized inbox. Can't tell you who it was. This homebrewer was nervous because he had accidentally pushed the stopper for his carboy into his beer. He was wondering whether he should try to fish it out or let it go until the fermentation was complete. Well, I said that if his stopper was sanitized, he shouldn't worry, that he'd cause more problems by going in after it. And if it wasn't sanitized, anything that may have been on the stopper was already in the beer. So at that point, you just got to cross your fingers and hope for the best. It sounds like a bigger stopper is in order for that brewer. Matthias from Vancouver, British Columbia writes in to say, I have a show idea, brewing bloopers. Matthias says, last month I was in our cold closet checking on my gallon jugs of fermenting lager, and when I picked up a jug, the bottom fell out and I watched beer splash to the floor. In my haste to mop up the closet, I locked myself inside and had to wait for my wife to come home to let me out. Well, sounds like an episode of the Brady Bunch. First of all, I hope there was plenty of homebrew in there to keep you company, Matthias, and it's lucky for you that you don't live alone. So what about that? Do you have any brewing bloopers you want to share? If so, send them to james@basicbrewing.com or use the contact form on basicbrewing.com. Sounds like a fun show. I'd also like to get your input on a note from Andrew in Melbourne, Australia. Andrew says, I've written because there's a bit of discussion on the Aussie Homebrewer website about the no-chiller method of brewing. Basically, they cook up the wort and rather than use an immersion or counterflow chiller, dump the hot wort into a vessel, preferably stainless steel, Andrew says, seal it off, and allow it to cool slowly. The claims are that there is no impact on the beer. The hot wort is supposed to pasteurize the headspace, and it allows the brew day to be broken in two so that pitching can occur any time in the future. Do you have an opinion on this? Well, it's very interesting. I've not heard of this technique. I would have one concern, though. Even though the headspace may be pasteurized shortly after you dump the hot wort into the vessel, I'd be concerned about leaving it overnight to cool slowly. If you put wort that's even slightly warmer than your room temperature into a sealed fermenter with an airlock, you can see that as the wort cools, it draws in air from the outside, causing the airlock to work in reverse. Now, I would be concerned that the cooling wort would suck in contaminated air as it cooled, bringing in nasty creatures that would love to feast on the wort before you get a chance to pitch the yeast. If you put the hot wort in a completely sealed vessel, you would have a heck of a time getting the top off the next day because of the vacuum. It seems to me. Now, in my opinion, cooling the wort is not that much trouble, and it doesn't take that much time. And I would rather take the extra step on the brew day rather than worry for weeks after that whether my beer was safe. But what do you think out there? If you have used this technique or if you have an opinion on the matter, write in and let us know. I'm curious to hear what our listeners have to say. And thanks to Andrew for bringing that up. Now, one shameless plug before we move on. Thanks to help from Kelly Dotson, our Basic Brewing shop is now online. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find our new all-grain DVD along with our original extract brewing DVD and a combo deal where you can save a couple of bucks. And if you want fries with that combo, you're going to have to wait. That's going to be added later. So anyway, go to basicbrewing.com and check it out. Now, on to our interview with Gary Glass. Gary recently became director of the American Homebrewers Association, but before that, a big part of his job was to run the National Homebrew Competition, and that's what we asked him to talk about this week. Gary, welcome again to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you.
And last time I talked to you, you had a different job title, and you've got a promotion since we
correct.
talked.
I moved up to the position of AHA director at the beginning of this year.
Well, congratulations. That's great.
Yeah, thanks, James.
I would imagine that would be quite an increase in responsibilities.
It is. It definitely is. Has been keeping me quite busy, but it's in a good way. The AHA has been steadily growing for the past several months, so that's a very good thing, and I don't mind the work.
Well, great. I want to talk to you about something that has been close to your heart and your former responsibilities for the past few years, and that is the National Homebrew Competition. And that's coming up here pretty quick, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The entry deadline is April 3rd through the 14th, so it is rapidly approaching.
And if someone wants to take part in the National Homebrew Competition, what do they have to do? What are the first steps?
Well, they need to submit their entries, and we have 10 regional locations that they would send their entries to, and that information is available on our Beertown, our website, beertown.org.
And how many beers do you expect to judge in this year's competition? How many did you judge last year, and how many do you predict this year?
Last year we had 4,127 entries. So, I would anticipate somewhere in that order for this year again. So, that was the second year in a row that we had broken the 4,000 mark. So.
That's a lot of beer.
It is a whole lot of beer.
But I guess it's made manageable by the fact that you do break it down into the regions. And how many rounds are there?
There are 2 rounds of judging. So we do the first round of judging, and that only requires a 1-bottle entry for the first round. And those are done at, like I said, in the 10 regional sites. And then the entries that win in each of the 29 categories that we have for the competition then go on to the second round of the competition. And that will be held at the National Homebrewers Conference, which will be in Orlando, Florida this year.
Yeah, hopefully we're talking about going. So I've got my fingers crossed that we can go this year.
It's going to be a fantastic time.
It sounds like a lot of fun. So how many, if you start out with, over 4,000 entries, how many get weeded down or pared down for the second round?
In the second round, there's somewhere around 720 or so entries that are eligible to be entered in the second round, and of those, maybe 700 are actually judged.
And how does that pairing or the paring down get done? I mean, are there a certain number of entries per category?
Right. In each category, in the first round, we award first, second, and third place for those entries. They have to score at least 30 points in order to be eligible. So there will be some categories that don't actually have all three winners in them, but most of them do. But those top three then get advanced on to the second round.
So there are regional medals as well as national level medals.
Yes. We do ribbons for the first round and medals for the second round.
Oh, I see. Okay. And how many categories are there?
We have 29 categories, and that includes those are the beer judge certification program categories. Those would be 23 beer styles, 2 cider categories, and 3 mead. And then for the National Homebrew Competition, we do a new entrance category for people who have never entered the competition before.
And tell me about that category. What goes in there?
Well, anyone who's never entered before can enter any beer or mead into that new entrance category. And it's kind of judged like a best of show kind of thing, because it can be just about any style. And then it's really a means of allowing people who have never entered on the national level a chance to compete against one another. So it's a really good way of getting people a chance to compete against some of the more novice entrants. It's worked out very well for us. So.
Is this a new thing? Fairly new?
No, I think we introduced it back in 2000.
In a fairly popular category?
Not as popular as some of the other categories, but we've gotten a fair number of entries in it.
If you're a first-time home brewer and you've made a beer that you like, or not a first-time home brewer, but if you're a home brewer and haven't entered the competition before and you're not quite sure of which category your beer would go into, it seems like to me that would be the category to hit it.
It would be a really good way to get feedback on your entry. But then again, in the new entrance category, you still have to state what style it is, so the judges know what they're judging.
Oh, I see. How do you, if you are in a situation like that where you're not too familiar with the styles, how can you get some guidance as far as which category to submit it to?
Well, the style guidelines are posted on the Beer Judge Certification Program website, which is bjcp.org. And that would be the first place to look. And I would suggest that anybody who's going to enter anything definitely look over those style guidelines before submitting an entry, because a lot of times something that was intended to be a porter might actually fall more in one of the stout categories, or you think you made an American pale ale, but it tastes more like an English pale ale. It's much better to enter it in whatever category it fits best in than necessarily what you were trying to brew. Another good resource would be if a homebrewer belongs to a local homebrew club, then I would highly suggest they bring it into their club meeting and have their club members evaluate it and see what category they think it would best fit into.
And they're not only the general categories, the 20-some-odd general categories, there's also subcategories too, right? And are those judged individually as well?
Well, they would be, each category would be judged according to the subcategories, and depending on the size of the category, something like American ales is going to have a lot of entries in it, so you'll probably get just one set of judges doing the American pale ales and another set doing the American brown ales, and then those would be the best from each would be advanced into kind of a mini best of show to determine the winners. So
there's only, even though there are subcategories, there aren't awards for those subcategories. It's all for the major categories.
Right, exactly.
It seems like to me that there would be more popular categories than others. Which are the biggies? Which are the ones that always get hit hard?
Well, American pale ales have been real popular. India pale ale is another big category, and the Belgian strong ales have been very popular over the last few years. Stouts are also another one that's really highly popular.
So the stouts are also popular. Well, that seems to make sense. Is there a strategy if you're going in to win a medal? or win a ribbon, is there a strategy to picking out maybe one of the beer styles that is less popular than the others?
Sure. Actually, the Quaff Club that's won and they're based in San Diego. They've won the Homebrew Club of the Year award for the past several years. And when they first set their sights on the award, they made a conscious effort to brew the styles that are the least common, and kind of perfect those styles. And it greatly improved their chances of winning.
So what are those low entry categories?
Something like the light ales or light lagers are not as popular as some of the other styles, and some of the more unusual ones, I guess, smoke flavored and wood aged beers probably don't get quite as many entries. Cider categories are probably our smallest categories, although those are all judged in at one location. And
they're kind of treated a little differently from the rest, right?
Well, I mean, they're judged to the style guidelines, but we judge them all in one round, instead of having them advance to a second round, since they're all judged in one location. Hopefully, at sometime the popularity of ciders will become strong enough that we can have them judged at the regional level with enough entries to make that worth doing.
Let's talk about the technical aspects. What kinds of bottles are you looking for?
The rules and regulations call for 10 to 14 ounce bottles, and the reason for that, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about why those rules exist. The real reason for that rule is that with competitions that are of a larger size, those bottles need to be able to fit into case boxes, and those case boxes need to be stacked. For the second round of the competition, we have three bottles of each entry in 29 categories, and up to 27 entries in each category. And you can imagine that's a whole lot of case boxes. That's over 100 case boxes, and so we have to be able to stack them. And
sure.
If the bottles are any bigger than that, then we're not going to be able to stack them very well. And then on the other side, if the bottles are smaller than that, there may not be enough in each bottle for the judges to properly evaluate the entry.
Now, I was kind of surprised to see that you would allow green glass.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of a holdover. There aren't so many green. It's really rare actually to see the green bottles show up, but every once in a while we'll see them, and they're more common amongst the meads that aren't going to be affected by light-struck flavors the way beers are. But there are plenty of green bottles that aren't twist-off, that are easy to cap, so that they used to be more common than they are now, but we haven't outlawed them. So I would certainly suggest that people who are entering beers that they should use brown bottles as much as possible to avoid light-struck flavors.
Just as a good general practice, you're not. The beer's going to be out of your control. You don't know where it's going to be. So I always say that if you're going to keep your beer in your basement and you know that it's always going to be down there until you serve it, it doesn't matter what color your bottles are. But if you are going to give it out to friends or enter it into competitions, brown is the safer choice.
Sure, absolutely. And it really is amazing how quickly you can develop those skunky flavors with just a short contact time with direct sunlight or fluorescent light.
Now, no paper labels, obviously, and any lettering that you put on the top of the cap has to be obscured.
Correct.
And no Grolsch type swing top bottles.
Right.
But getting them to you. Now, that's kind of a trick, and that's been a topic on the show in the past. What is your advice on shipping bottles?
Well, first off, I would suggest packing them very carefully. Good idea to put a plastic bag to line your box with, and then thoroughly wrap the entries with a bubble wrap is probably the best way to do it. Make sure that none of the bottles in your package can directly contact one another, and that they're fairly tightly packed. Otherwise, there's a good possibility that in the shipping process your package might not be handled as gently as you would like, and they could break en route. And if they end up leaking, then the shipper may return the bottles or return the package to you. It's currently illegal to ship alcohol via the U.S. Postal Service, though there aren't any federal laws against private shippers from shipping alcohol. A lot of the shippers will refuse to ship it if they know that your package contains alcohol. What a lot of homebrewers will do is label their packages as yeast samples for analysis,
which is technically correct.
Technically, yes, because unless you're ultra filtering, then there's going to be some yeast in each of those bottles, and they are being submitted for evaluation.
Now, in the past, what I've done in sending through one of the private carriers is to list glass bottles as the contents. But I'd see in your shipping instructions that some shippers may be cautious about shipping glass bottles.
Yeah, I would say that might not be the best idea, because especially after 9/11. Shippers are a lot more cautious about what they allow to be shipped, and they're much more likely to open up the package if there's anything suspicious about it.
And then they might, want to taste the samples inside.
Well, if they're going to throw them out, then somebody might as well get some enjoyment out of it.
Now, I guess the big question is, if you're home brewing for yourself, what's in it for the average home brewer to enter a competition like this? Why should they bother to go to all the trouble and expense? Because there's a little bit of expense, not much. But why should they go to all the trouble to enter a homebrew competition?
Well, I would say the first reason for most people to enter would be that they get some really valuable feedback from the judges. Each entry is judged by at least two judges, and they will evaluate each entry on appearance, aroma, flavor, mouthfeel, and overall impression. And the comments that they get back will most definitely help them in improving their future brewers. When you actually do win, there's a great deal of pride when you're competing against several other homebrewers and you produce something that the judges feel is better than the rest. Definitely, there's a lot of aspect of fun there and sense of pride when you can hang a ribbon on your wall.
What are the chances, if you're a rookie, that you would go in and actually win a ribbon or a medal?
Well, we have rookie brewers win every year in nationals. It's certainly one of the toughest competitions out there, but really it's just about how good the quality of the entry is and whether or not it's entered in the right style.
And who are the judges generally?
Most of the judges in the nationals are beer judge certification program judges, and have varying ranks from certified all the way up to grandmaster. The second round of the competition, since we hold it at the conference, we tend to get some of the best judges from all over the country come in to judge the second round of nationals. So you're really not going to find a better selection of judges than second round nationals. And
for the first round, you don't have to submit your recipe, right? But if you go on to the second round, you got to be prepared to give up your secrets, right?
Yeah, you sure are. Because if you do win a gold medal, we're going to publish it in Zymergy magazine.
No more Gary's secret recipe.
Well, unfortunately, I can't enter the competition as an employee of the Brewers Association.
Oh, there. Well, there
My
you go.
My secrets are safe.
Well, very good. Is there anything else that you can think of that we need to mention as far as the homebrew competition?
No, I can't think of anything right offhand, but certainly for your listeners, they can visit the www.beertown.org website and get all the information they need. And we've got entry forms available there. as well as some online entry options and the shipping locations for each of the regional sites.
Very good. I appreciate your help, Gary.
Certainly, my pleasure.
Well, thanks again to Gary Glass, Director of the American Homebrewers Association. We continued our chat with Gary, and you can hear that next week. Gary and I have a conversation that was too much, and you'll hear why in next week's episode. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say hey, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. And if you're wanting to get into home brewing while you're on our site, you can check out our DVDs. In Basic Brewing Introduction to Extract Home Brewing, we walk you through the extract brewing process step by step from boiling to bottling. And in the Basic Brewing Stepping into All Grain DVD, we take you through the all grain process from milling your grain to collecting your wort. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVD on basicbrewing.com, and if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order it online. And if your local homebrew shop doesn't carry our DVDs, maybe you can, suggest they can contact me to find out how they can. Well, that's all until next week. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer, production help for Basic Brewing Radio, and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time. So long.